Larry Rudolph was a dentist who built an empire in strip mall suburbia and had a reputation as a gun culture hero. Then came the love triangle, the allegations of insurance fraud, and the mysterious death of wife Bianca in Africa. Was it a tragic accident? Or a murder for money? Or he tried to hide his girlfriend? What Larry did was one of the most bizarre scams we have been able to find. Here's why. The best trophy hunter must track its prey, lure the big cat with wild dogs, with hedgehogs, with a vanishing species of antelope as bait, slaughter a southern impala, hang it high in the Mutondo trees, then wait. If you are careful and you are quiet, the camouflaged victim will leap up and succumb to the rifle. Experienced game scouts, though, recommend keeping a shotgun in the truck. Once that cat is down, you'd best finish her off before she runs away. Over the course of a fortnight in early autumn of 2016, Bianca Rudolph pulled the trigger on all that bait and still managed to execute a zebra. Alas, no leopard. The Zambian government had lifted its ban on leopard and lion stalking for a full season, so that rich tourists like Bianca and her husband could take part. Larry was a dentist worth at least $5 million, and Bianca was a decent shot and a dedicated wife. But her marriage was hard work. Bianca expressed this to friends around the time of the trip, but she wouldn't give up on it. So they were out there on the safari to reload their love, but they weren't getting their hands on a trophy. So Larry and one of the couple's 2 safari guides asked Bianca if she'd like to stay out here in the national park for a few days to claim her prize. But she needed to be elsewhere, in the States, for her nephew's wedding. She looked forward to spending time with Italian relatives and their 2 grown kids. So the hunting party started to unload their guns, then rumbled back to camp. The Rudolphs would pack for Lusaka at dawn. By around 5 a.m., the coffee had arrived and the baggage attendant had visited the master suite, a haughty log cabin lean-to with a view. Larry and Bianca weren't ready, not yet. The guides charged their satellite phones in the dining hall as first light brushed upon the banks of the Kafue River. They were nearly finished logging the vacation's tally of carcasses when they heard, from inside the cabin, a shotgun blast. At the foot of the dresser next to the bathroom, there was Bianca's body. A hole between 6 and 8 centimeters wide had macerated her black t-shirt, her bra, the left side of her heart. Larry slumped over Bianca, blood staining the floor beneath her wedding ring and watch. "My wife has committed suicide," he cried out. The scout claimed that Larry wanted to throw himself in the river. He said that Larry claimed he'd heard the shot from the shower, but the scout remembers seeing that the dentist's shoes were on, that his body was dry. Larry went on to tell the other guide, his longtime hunting mate Mark Swanepoel, that he was in the bathroom to relieve himself. On their drive to notify the authorities, Larry and Swanepoel discussed theories about how maybe Bianca's death wasn't a suicide at all, how her fingernails could have picked at the trigger while picking up the gun, or how its leather case fit too tightly to zip, perhaps forcing Bianca to slam the butt end of a rare and mistakenly loaded Browning Auto 5 smack dab onto the floor, the muzzle facing square and tight against her lung. It was called a tragic accident by the local cops, and after accompanying Larry and the corpse to Lusaka, they returned his weapon. So they weren't exactly CSI Miami. What kind of a husband, the agent asked himself, forgets his whereabouts when his wife of 34 years takes a bullet? What kind of man was the American millionaire? A decade earlier, Larry Rudolph had made another trip to the same remote camp in Zambia. A dangerous trip, perhaps, as Larry lost his thumb, or at least the chunk by the nail, to an alligator. But a dozen of Larry's former close friends and senior colleagues believed that he might have blown his own finger away. Upon Larry's return to the U.S., a fellow hunter and arbitration lawyer, Ron Arendt, said Larry asked him whether he should claim disability. Why would a healthy 51-year-old have taken out multiple private insurance policies, or why would he particularly need the tip of his thumb on his non-dominant left hand to hold a mouth mirror? Larry later said the problem was nerve damage and lasting numbness. Top insurers would investigate, but it was cost-prohibitive to visit the big cat country. Larry would collect at least $3.5 million in the years to come. Shadows of doubt hovered over Dr. Rudolph like a canopy above the savannah. Over decades, he has indulged brushes with fame, fortune, and fraudulent behavior, culminating in the death of his wife and the rebirth of a luxurious double life with an alleged partner in crime. He is like Breaking Bad's Walter White. Meanwhile, Larry's spasms of rage were in the air. Literally, 2 former colleagues recall his having chucked a small, tooth-shaped mirror so hard across the length of a hallway that it stuck in a wall and stayed there for days. At a meeting in late 2007, Larry chewed out employees for what his legal team at the time called dismay at the declining professional standards of his business, Total Dentistry's branch in suburban Greentree. He asked for patient records to provide his own diagnosis and treatment plans, and he wanted non-professional conduct reported directly to him for remedial action. Larry's partners, finding little use for a belligerent ex-dentist, attempted to force him out. He sued for damages and defamation, but they confronted him at his lawyer's office. A lot of cash had been moved around or gone missing, they claimed. One of the partners, Dr. Tim Runco, said they gave Larry an ultimatum: walk away or we're going to press charges. Larry denied the embezzlement accusation, kicked them out of the room, and they soon settled. But Larry did not just walk away. He prepared to launch an empire of his own, Three Rivers Dental Group, with the first location 500 feet from his rivals. And Larry's secret girlfriend, Lori, was lonely and less than lavish in the summer of 2015, living out of a 3-story condo on a cul-de-sac in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, at the end of Wild Turkey Drive. Larry subsidized her rent and helped with college tuition for her daughter, but Larry and Bianca were spending most of their time at the new place in Paradise Valley. Larry did pull up in his old red truck every now and then, mostly to drop off Lori from work. Larry and Lori were business associates and friends without benefits, as she described it. In May 2016, Bianca confided in Larry's personal assistant that she'd found another woman's hair clips in her bed and was thinking about divorce again. Bianca told the assistant that she had confronted Larry with an ultimatum of her own and that he had denied the affair. When she presented emails documenting it, he allegedly told his wife that he'd leave Lori once and for all. One way or another, Bianca believed in reconciliation, forgiveness, and understanding. So that September, husband and wife were bound for Lusaka. The Rudolphs were always happiest together when they were on the hunt. But that changed after Bianca's death. If patients ever asked about her death, the staff at Larry's practice had been instructed to change the subject, some former staff members say. No flowers, no condolence calls, no sympathy cards. Just the usual hundreds or thousands of dollars up front, with a 5% discount as incentive for cold hard cash. This was Three Rivers Dental Group, and they had a motto to uphold: no sights, no sounds, no fears. But fear reverberated louder than ever in 2017, when employees remember returning from a weekend to discover security cameras installed all over in the operatories above the patients, in the private break room, in the lab. After Bianca's death, Larry regularly traveled from Paradise Valley to Pittsburgh. Following in his footsteps, branch to branch to branch, was Lori, who had already all but moved in with him at the Rudolph family mansion in Arizona. As an executive administrator, Lori was a self-described enforcer and empire builder who could help with insurance claims or paychecks. Now, when dentists had a money question, Larry often sent them to his not-so-secret girlfriend. But there was also, as 6 former employees described, the cash. Several staffers recall accepting regular cash payments from customers of over $10,000, for which the IRS requires formal documentation. Toward the end of each day, 3 former staffers say they would drop bill stacks into the safe at each Three Rivers location. Lori's personal bank accounts, meanwhile, showed large cash deposits: $20,000 in 2014, $60,000 in 2015, $75,000 in 2016, the year Bianca died, and totaling roughly $239,800 by 2017. In the spring of 2017, 9 life insurance policies and accidental death claims in the Bianca tragedy had come through to Larry. As with the thumb, however, private investigators for the insurers concluded that there wasn't enough information to not approve his claims. The Rudolphs had set up a survivor's trust for life insurance less than 6 months before Bianca's death. Larry first inquired about processing the insurance, 2 days after his daughter finally learned her mother was gone. The payday was about $5 million. That summer, Larry purchased a $3.5 million lot in Paradise Valley, so Lori could build a custom mansion, a desert castle all her own, a mile and a half from the last place Bianca called home. The U.S. government had been investigating Larry Rudolph ever since a friend of Bianca contacted the FBI's South African attaché suspecting foul play 2 weeks after her death. But this was the age of a Teflon Don, when you could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and become president. Once the funeral cleared out, Larry and Lori binge-watched election coverage for days. Then, Larry tweeted incessantly at the new president's sons, flaunting his Safari Club experience in a plea for their father to nominate him as director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. In 2019, Larry and Lori moved out of Bianca's beloved home because Larry didn't feel comfortable there anymore and into a condo while Lori's castle broke ground. The neighbors-to-be would invite him and Lori over for a glass of wine, and Larry bragged about the trophy room he was having built. He'd killed so many animals, it needed 2 floors. Mark Swanepoel, the same hunting guide who'd driven with Larry to get the Zambian cops on the day of Bianca's death, told him the feds were in Africa. But here was Lori, at the leathery back bar of Ocean 44 in Scottsdale, going on about buying a house in Pennsylvania too. She was sick of that condo off Wild Turkey Drive. A petty argument gave way to a break in the music. That's when their regular bartender claimed he witnessed Larry going off. Lori has formally disputed the bartender's story, but he would immediately tell co-workers that he heard Larry scream at least part of something so loudly that he believed a family sitting nearby heard it too. "I killed my wife for you." In any case, murder would be difficult to prove. The lead agent assigned to the cold case found Anna Grimley and asked her about that afternoon, but the bartender had been afraid to speak up so far. His partner cross-checked with Zambian authorities about pathology and ballistics reports when a local cop had tested dropping Larry's gun. It hadn't fired, but the instructions for his firearm said that it could still always accidentally discharge. The feds even recreated 100 new versions of the leather gun bag. The Rudolph's old leather case, though, had evidence of a bullet hole blown straight through the top. Lori worried the feds were closing in, as close as the chatty woman sitting next to her and Larry on an airplane. Last November, the FBI partners had found the game scout at the Kafue River and were beginning to crack the front desk at Three Rivers Dental. Larry and Lori closed Three Rivers Dental for the holidays and boarded a flight from Phoenix to Cabo on December 21st. It was there in Cabo that immigration officers working with the FBI arrested Larry, and prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office charged Larry with foreign murder and mail fraud of 7 life insurers. Larry's attorney argued in federal court that USA v. Rudolph was as weak of a murder case as you can get. They point to Larry's cooperation with the Zambian police and their conclusion that his wife's death was an accident, despite the police report taking just 2 days to complete. They point to their client's lack of interference with the Zambian coroner's autopsy, even though consular officials alleged that Larry asked them repeatedly how African privacy laws might apply to autopsy and police records related to the case. In a statement, Larry's attorney said, "Strangely, 5 years later, the feds brought charges without any real evidence, no eyewitnesses, no forensics, no anything, except for some speculation sprinkled into a chasm of conjecture." But the truth cannot stay hidden. On August 1st, 2012, Larry Rudolph was found guilty of murdering Bianca and of mail fraud for the life insurance payouts. Lori Milleron was found guilty of obstruction, perjury, and of being an accessory to Larry's crimes. Time and time again, we hear stories where justice was served even after years or decades have passed since the initial occurrence. This could mean an old case being reopened and the perpetrator finally brought to justice, or a wrongfully accused person being exonerated after many years of false imprisonment. Whatever the situation may be, true justice will always prevail in the end if enough effort is put into seeking it out.